Welcome to our channel. Enjoy our story and don't forget to subscribe.
I wasn't expecting anyone at 11:30 on a Tuesday night. I'd already changed into my pajamas, had my book open on the nightstand, and was thinking about how I needed to be up early for my shift at the hospital. So when the doorbell rang, my first thought was that someone had the wrong address. Maybe a drunk neighbor, maybe a delivery driver who couldn't read house numbers in the dark. I pulled on my robe and walked downstairs, flipping on the porch light as I approached the door. Through the frosted glass panel, I could see a figure standing there, small, hunched, swaying slightly. Something about the posture made my stomach tighten with worry even before I opened the door. When I did, I felt the world tilt sideways. The woman on my porch looked like me. Same dark brown hair that curled at the ends, same green eyes, same small scar above the left eyebrow from when we were 7, and we had crashed our bike into Mrs. Henderson's fence. But that's where the similarity ended tonight, because her face was a canvas of violence. A purple bruise bloomed across her left cheekbone, spreading up to her temple where the skin had split and scabbed over. Her bottom lip was split down the middle, swollen and crusted with dried blood. One eye was nearly swollen shut, the surrounding tissue an angry red-purple that would turn yellow in a few days. "Sarah," I whispered, and my voice didn't sound like my own. "I need your help," she said, and then her face crumpled and she started crying. Not the pretty crying you see in movies, but ugly, desperate sobbing that shook her whole body. I pulled her inside and locked the door behind us, my hands trembling so badly I could barely work the deadbolt. My mind was racing, trying to process what I was seeing. This was my twin sister, my other half. We'd shared a womb, shared a room until we were 18, shared everything. And someone had done this to her. I led her to the couch, my arm around her, shoulders, feeling her shake. She was so thin. When had she gotten so thin? I brought her ice wrapped in a dish towel, a glass of water, a box of tissues. I didn't know what else to do. I'm a nurse. I've seen trauma. I've treated injuries worse than this. But this was different. This was Sarah. We're identical twins. Not just similar, identical. We've always had this connection that goes beyond normal siblings. When she broke her arm falling off the monkey bars in 5th grade, I felt the snap in my own bones from across the playground. When I got divorced 3 years ago, she called me before I even told anyone, said she just knew something was wrong. When we were teenagers, we could finish each other's sentences, knew what the other was thinking with just a look. We used to joke that we shared one brain between 2 bodies. But lately, over the past year maybe, she'd been distant. We'd talk on the phone and the conversation would feel stilted, awkward, like we were strangers, making small talk. She'd cancel plans at the last minute. Couldn't make it to lunch, too tired for our weekly phone call, too busy to come over. Always an excuse. I'd been hurt, thought maybe I'd done something wrong, that she was pulling away from me for reasons I couldn't understand. Now, looking at her broken face, I understood everything. "How long?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I was afraid of the answer. She pressed the ice to her cheek, wincing. "Half a year since it got physical," she said quietly, not meeting my eyes. "But it started way before that, maybe 2 years ago. Little things at first, so small I didn't even notice them happening." "What kind of things?" I sat beside her, close enough that our knees touched. Contact. She needed to know I was here. "He didn't like my friends," she began, her voice flat, reciting facts. "Said they were bad influences, said Karen drank too much and Lisa was always gossiping. He'd get upset when I made plans with them. Wouldn't talk to me for days after. So I started canceling. It was easier than dealing with his mood." She laughed bitterly. "Then it was my clothes. Said I dressed too provocatively, that I was trying to get attention from other men. I started wearing baggy sweaters and jeans just to keep the peace." I thought about the Sarah I used to know. She'd loved fashion, loved putting together outfits, wearing bright colors. The woman sitting next to me was wearing a shapeless gray hoodie and faded jeans that hung off her frame. He wanted to manage our money together, she continued. Said it was more efficient, that I was bad with finances. So we combined everything, my paycheck, his paycheck, all in one account that he monitored. Then he said I was spending too much on groceries, on gas, on stupid things. Started giving me an allowance, $50 a week, for everything. Her voice cracked. I'm 43 years old and my husband gives me an allowance like I'm a child. Sarah. I started, but she kept talking. The words pouring out now like she'd been holding them back for too long. He checks my phone. Every night. Goes through my texts, my calls, my emails. There's a tracking app he installed. Said it was for safety, so he'd know where I was if something happened to me. But really, it's so he knows where I am every second. If I go to the grocery store and it takes too long, he calls. Wants to know why I was there for an hour. Did I talk to someone? Who was it? What did we talk about? She was breathing faster now, her hands clenching around the ice pack. He checks my mileage, writes down the number on the odometer every morning and checks it when he gets home. If it doesn't match up with where I said I went, he interrogates me. My stomach was churning. Mark, her husband of 4 years, the guy who'd swept her off her feet at a mutual friend's barbecue, who'd proposed after 6 months with a ring he'd saved up for, who everyone thought was such a good man, stable job managing insurance claims, bought a nice house in a good neighborhood, coached Little League on weekends. I'd never particularly liked him. Something about his smile always seemed calculated, like he was performing rather than genuinely happy. But I'd thought I was just being overprotective. The divorced older sister by 12 minutes who didn't trust anyone anymore. I'd never imagined this. When did he start hitting you? I asked, even though I didn't want to know the answer. She touched the bruise on her temple gently, carefully. 6 months ago. I'd made plans to go to book club without telling him. Just forgot to mention it. He came home and I wasn't there. And when I got back, he was furious. Said I was sneaking around, probably meeting some man. I tried to explain, but he grabbed my arm so hard he left fingerprints, bruises in the shape of his hand. She pulled up her sleeve, and I could see the faded yellow marks still there, overlaid with fresh, purple ones. He cried after. Said he was so sorry, that he just loved me so much, and the thought of losing me made him crazy. Promised it would never happen again. But it did. It always does, doesn't it? She looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something in her eyes that scared me more than the bruises. Resignation. Defeat. Like she'd accepted this as her life now. It got worse. He'd push me into walls, grab my hair. One time he threw a plate at my head because dinner wasn't ready on time. Then last month he started, she trailed off, swallowing hard. Started what? Choking me. When he got really angry. Just for a few seconds, but long enough that I'd see stars. Long enough to remind me that he could kill me if he wanted to. Her voice was so quiet I had to lean in to hear her. Last week I bought the wrong beer. He wanted Coors Light and I accidentally got Miller Lite. Such a stupid mistake. He grabbed me by the hair and threw me against the kitchen counter. She gestured to the bruise on her temple. This was from the cabinet handle. Could have been worse. Could have been the corner of the counter. I felt rage building in my chest, hot and sharp. Jesus, Sarah, why didn't you tell me sooner? Why didn't you call me? I was ashamed. Tears were sliding down her cheeks now, mixing with the melting ice water. Embarrassed. You had your life together, you know. After Tom left, after your divorce, you rebuilt everything from scratch. Went back to school, got your nursing degree, bought this place. You were so strong. And here I was, supposed to have the perfect marriage, the perfect life. And instead, she gestured at her face. Instead, I had this. This is not your fault, I said fiercely, grabbing her hands. "None of this is your fault. You understand me?" "He says it is. Says I provoke him. That if I just tried harder to make him happy, if I just did things right, he wouldn't get so angry. And part of me—" She choked on the words. "Part of me believed him. Thought maybe if I was a better wife, a better person, he'd go back to being the man I married. No." I squeezed her hand so hard it probably hurt. "That man never existed. This is who he is. This is who he's always been. He just hid it until he had you trapped." She nodded slowly, like she was trying to convince herself. "I know. I'm starting to know. My friend Lisa, you remember her from book club? She pulled me aside a few weeks ago at the grocery store. Said she was worried about me. That I looked thin, looked tired, seemed scared. Mark had been there with me, was checking my mileage because he wanted to make sure I wasn't going anywhere I shouldn't. Lisa saw it all. She gave me her lawyer's number, wrote it on a receipt, and slipped it to me when Mark wasn't looking. Smart woman. I started saving money, just a little bit from the grocery allowance. $20 here, $30 there. I'd hide it in an old tampon box in the bathroom. Knew he'd never look there. It took me a month to save up enough to consult with a lawyer. I went yesterday. Told Mark I was going to the dentist." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "The lawyer was good. Listened to everything. Told me I had grounds for a protection order, that we could file for divorce and I'd probably get the house and a good settlement. Gave me a folder with information, resources, shelter addresses if I needed them." "That's good," I said. "That's a start." "Mark found the folder last night when he went through my purse." Her voice went flat again. "I'd hidden it under the lining, but he tore the whole thing apart. He knew I was planning to leave, and he lost it." I didn't need to ask what happened next. The evidence was all over her face, her arms, probably places I couldn't see. "He threw me down the stairs," she said quietly. "Then when I was trying to get up, he kicked me in the ribs. Said if I ever tried to leave him, he'd kill me. Said he'd make it look like an accident and no one would ever know. Then he'd tell everyone what a terrible wife I'd been, how I'd cheated on him, how I'd driven him to it. He'd ruin my reputation, take everything from me." She looked up at me, her good eye wide with fear. "I believe him, Jen. He meant every word." "Where does he think you are now?" "At his mother's house. She lives 3 hours away. He thinks I went to help her after she had surgery." Sarah pulled her phone out of her pocket, a phone I now knew Mark monitored constantly. "I have maybe 2 days before he starts calling her to check up on me. Maybe less." "Then we use those 2 days," I said, my mind already racing. "You can't go back there, Sarah. You know that, right?" "I don't have anywhere else to go. He's got all the money. The house is in his name. I don't have a job anymore. He made me quit last year. Said we didn't need my income and it was taking time away from taking care of the house." She was spiraling. I could hear the panic rising in her voice. "I don't have anything, Jen. No money, no job, nowhere to live. And if I try to leave, if I try to press charges, it's my word against his. He's so careful. Never hits me where people can see. Never in front of witnesses. And everyone loves him. The neighbors, his co-workers, his family. They'll all say I'm lying, that I'm crazy." "Stop," I interrupted, an idea forming in my mind. "Crazy, maybe, but it might work. We're twins." She blinked at me, confused by the non sequitur. "What?" "We're identical twins. We've switched places before." I stood up, pacing now, the pieces clicking together. "Remember in high school? You took my math test because I had the flu. I went to that party as you when you were grounded. We fooled everyone. Teachers, mom and dad, our friends. No one could tell the difference." Understanding dawned on her face, followed quickly by fear. "No, Jenna, no, that's insane." "Is it?" I turned to face her. "Think about it. You stay here where you're safe. Rest. Heal. Talk to the lawyer again. Figure out your next steps. And I go back to your house as you, just for a few days, long enough to document everything. "He'll know," she said, shaking her head. "He'll figure it out." "Will he? When's the last time he really looked at you, Sarah? Really saw you?" I sat back down beside her. "You said he treats you like an object he controls, not a person. He doesn't see you anymore. He sees what he wants to see, a wife who does what she's told." She was quiet, thinking. I could see the wheels turning, hope and terror warring on her face. "I'll play the role," I continued. "I'll act scared, submissive, whatever he expects. But I'll be gathering evidence the whole time. Pictures, videos, documentation of everything. And if he tries anything, if he gets violent—" I paused. "I'm not you. I won't just take it." "He's dangerous, Jen. If he figured out it wasn't me, if he caught you documenting things." "I know, but I'm not defenseless." I'd taken self-defense classes after my divorce, when I'd been living alone for the first time in 20 years and feeling vulnerable. I'd learned how to break holds, how to fight back, where to strike to disable an attacker. And I work in the ER. I've dealt with aggressive patients, people high on drugs, people who want to hurt me. I know how to stay calm under pressure. This is different. I know it is. But Sarah— I took her hands again. "He already hurt you. He's going to keep hurting you unless we stop him. And the only way to stop him is to have proof. Real, undeniable proof of what he's doing." She searched my face. Her face, really. The mirror image she'd known her entire life. We'd been inseparable as kids, had our own language that only we understood, could feel each other's pain. And right now, I could feel hers, deep and aching and desperate. "Okay," she finally whispered. "Okay, but you have to promise me you'll be careful, that if it gets too dangerous, you'll leave." "I promise." I pulled her into a hug, feeling her body shake against mine. "We're going to get you out of this. I swear it." The next morning, I called in sick to work. The first time I'd done that in over a year. Sarah slept until almost noon, and when she woke up, I could see the bruises had darkened overnight, the purple spreading into deeper shades of black and blue. She moved carefully, stiffly, and I wondered what injuries were hidden under her clothes. We spent the afternoon preparing. She walked me through everything about her life with Mark, and with every detail, my rage grew colder and sharper. How he liked his coffee. 3 sugars, splash of cream, heated for exactly 45 seconds in the microwave. Which news channel he watched. Fox, always Fox, and he'd get angry if she changed it. How his work shirts had to be folded with the collar facing up and the sleeves tucked just so. How the throw pillows on the couch had to be arranged in a specific pattern. How she had to ask permission before using the phone, before going anywhere, before buying anything. "He goes through the mail before I can see it," she said. "Says he's protecting me from scammers and identity theft. But really, he's making sure I don't get any information I'm not supposed to have." She showed me photos of the house on her phone, walking me through each room. The kitchen where he'd thrown her against the counter, the stairs he'd pushed her down, the bedroom where she'd stopped sleeping in the bed because he'd used sex as another form of control, the bathroom where the lock had been removed from the door. "He took it off 6 months ago," she explained. "Said I was spending too much time in there, that I was hiding from him." She gave me a second phone, a prepaid flip phone she'd bought with her hidden money. "For documentation," she said. "Take pictures, videos, anything you can, but hide it. If he finds it, he'll know. Something's wrong." By 3 o'clock, I was dressed in her clothes, jeans that were too loose on me. I was the same height, but I'd always been slightly heavier, more muscular from my work on my feet all day. A baggy gray sweater that hid my shape. Her wedding ring on my finger, the diamond catching the light. I pulled my hair back into a low ponytail the way she wore it now. We used to wear our hair down, had loved our curls, but Mark didn't like it that way. I looked in the mirror and saw my sister staring back at me, but with something different in the eyes, something harder, angrier. "I'm terrified," Sarah admitted as I gathered my things. What if he hurts you? What if this goes wrong? I'd never forgive myself. It won't go wrong. I hugged her tight. And even if it does, even if he figures it out, I can handle myself. You just focus on staying safe, okay? Stay here. Keep the doors locked. Don't answer if anyone calls except me on this number. I handed her my phone. I'll use your phone so everything looks normal. Jenna, we're doing this, I said firmly. He's controlled you long enough. Time someone controlled him for a change. I drove her sedan through streets I barely knew, following the GPS to the suburban neighborhood where she lived with her abuser. The houses got nicer as I drove. Well-maintained lawns, expensive cars and driveways, the kind of neighborhood where people probably said things like, "That could never happen here." The kind of neighborhood where no one would believe that behind closed doors, a man was systematically destroying his wife. Sarah's house was at the end of a cul-de-sac. White siding, black shutters, a red front door with a brass knocker, flower beds that were meticulously maintained, a wooden sign hanging by the door that said, "Home Sweet Home," in white cursive letters. It looked like something out of a magazine, like the kind of place where happy families lived. I knew better now. I parked in the driveway at 4:15 and sat for a moment, steeling myself. My heart was pounding, my palms sweating. This was real. I was really doing this. In 15 minutes, I'd be face to face with the man who'd beaten my sister, threatened to kill her, spent years breaking her down piece by piece. I got out of the car and let myself in with Sarah's key. The house was even more unsettling on the inside. Everything was spotless, perfectly arranged, not a thing out of place. Beige walls with generic landscape paintings in cheap frames, matching furniture that looked like it had come from a department store showroom. Not a personal touch anywhere. No family photos, no mementos, nothing that said Sarah lived here. It was like a hotel room. Sterile. Empty. I found the kitchen and saw the casserole Sarah had told me about. Chicken and rice, already prepared yesterday morning before her world had fallen apart. All I had to do was heat it up. I turned on the oven and set it to 350 degrees. While it heated, I explored quickly, memorizing the layout. Living room with the TV and Mark's recliner, dining room with a table set for two, downstairs bathroom with matching beige towels. I went upstairs. Master bedroom with a king bed made so tightly you could bounce a quarter off it. His closet organized by color, pants on one side, shirts on the other. Her closet sparse, full of baggy clothes in muted colors. The bathroom where the lock had been removed, leaving just screw holes in the wood. I opened the medicine cabinet and found what I expected. Sarah's prescriptions. Xanax, Ambien, an antidepressant I didn't recognize. All prescribed within the last year. All filled at different pharmacies. Back downstairs, I checked the time. 4:28. I pulled the casserole out of the oven, set it on the table with oven mitts, got out plates and silverware. My hands were shaking. I shoved them in my pockets and took a deep breath. At exactly 4:30, I heard the garage door open. This was it. No turning back now. The door from the garage swung open and Mark walked in. He was exactly as I remembered. Average height, maybe 5'10", brown hair thinning on top, the kind of face you'd forget 5 minutes after seeing it. He was wearing khakis and a navy polo shirt with his company logo embroidered on the chest. He looked tired, normal, like someone's nice, ordinary husband coming home from a long day at work. He set his keys on the counter in a specific spot. I watched where they landed, noted the precision of the movement. This was a man who needed control over every detail. "Hey," he said, not really looking at me. His eyes were on his phone, scrolling through something. "What's for dinner?" "Chicken casserole." My voice came out sounding exactly like Sarah's. We'd always had identical voices, one of the many things that had made us so good at switching places. He walked past me to the dining room table, pulled out his chair, the one at the head of the table, of course, and sat down. I waited for him to say something. "Thank you. Smells good." How was your day? Anything. He said nothing. I sat down in my spot across from him, the submissive position. He served himself first, a large portion, then pushed the casserole dish toward me without a word. He took a bite, chewed slowly, set his fork down. It's dry. 3 words, flat, accusatory. I followed the recipe, I said, keeping my voice quiet, uncertain, the way Sarah had coached me. Well, you must have done something wrong. He took another bite, made a face. It's bland, too. Did you forget to season it? I used what the recipe called for. His eyes flicked up to meet mine then, and I felt a chill run down my spine. They were cold, empty, like looking into the eyes of a shark. Don't make excuses, Sarah. Just do better next time. I looked down at my plate, bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. This was just dinner, just a simple dinner, and already he was tearing her down, making her feel worthless over a casserole. I couldn't imagine enduring this every single day for years. We ate in silence. He scrolled through his phone between bites, occasionally making dismissive noises at whatever he was reading. I pushed food around my plate, barely eating, my stomach too knotted with tension to handle food. When he finished, he pushed his plate toward me. I'm going to watch the game, he announced, standing up. Clean this up. Not a request, a command. Okay, I said quietly. He walked into the living room and I heard the TV click on, the volume too loud. I cleared the table, washed the dishes by hand because I didn't know if there was a dishwasher, dried them, and put them away exactly where Sarah had shown me in the photos. Every movement felt like a performance, like I was walking through a minefield where one wrong step would trigger an explosion. When I finished, I stood in the kitchen doorway watching him. He was sprawled in, his recliner, beer in hand. Coors Light, I noted. Eyes fixed on the television. The picture of a man relaxing after work. He didn't look at me once. This was the man who'd beaten my sister, threatened to kill her, made her feel so worthless that she'd believed she deserved it. And now it was my turn. My turn to see exactly who Mark really was. My turn to gather the evidence that would put him away. My turn to teach him that he'd picked the wrong woman to destroy. I just had to survive long enough to do it. That first evening passed in agonizing slowness. I moved through Sarah's house like a ghost, hyper-aware of every sound, every movement. Mark stayed in his recliner watching the game until almost 10 o'clock, occasionally calling out demands. Another beer. Turn down the thermostat. Where's the remote? Never mind, found it. Each command delivered in that same flat, emotionless tone that somehow felt more threatening than if he'd been yelling. I responded to each one with quiet compliance, playing the role Sarah had taught me. Yes. Okay. Right away. The words tasted like ash in my mouth. Around 9:30, he finally looked directly at me. I was sitting on the couch, not too close to his chair, Sarah had warned me about that, pretending to read a magazine I'd found on the coffee table. You're quiet tonight, he said, and there was something in his voice that made my skin crawl. Suspicion? Testing? Just tired, I replied, keeping my eyes on the magazine. Didn't sleep well last night. He went back to his game, but I could feel his attention on me, assessing. My heart hammered in my chest. Could he tell? Did I move differently than Sarah? Sit differently? Was there something in my posture that gave me away? The moment passed. He turned back to the television and I slowly released the breath I'd been holding. At 10:15, he stood up, stretched, announced he was going to bed. Don't stay up too late, he said, already walking toward the stairs. Not a suggestion, an order. I won't, I murmured. I waited until I heard the bedroom door close upstairs, then waited another 10 minutes, listening to the sounds of him moving around, the toilet flushing, the creak of the bed as he got in. Then silence. I sat in that silence for another 5 minutes, barely breathing, before I finally moved. The prepaid phone was hidden in my pocket. I pulled it out with shaking hands and started documenting. Photos of the house, the sterile, empty rooms, the removed lock on the bathroom door, the medications in the cabinet. I opened Sarah's purse where I'd left it on the kitchen counter and found what she'd told me would be there. A small notebook, hidden in the lining, that she'd somehow missed yesterday when Mark had torn through it. I opened it and felt my stomach drop. It was a journal. Dates, times, descriptions of abuse. Written in Sarah's neat handwriting, the words precise and careful, like she was documenting evidence for a court case. Maybe that's exactly what she'd been doing. March 15th. M grabbed my arm when I didn't respond fast enough to his question, left bruises in the shape of his fingers, wore long sleeves for a week. April 2nd. M threw a glass at the wall next to my head because dinner was cold. Said next time he wouldn't miss. April 23rd. M pushed me into the wall during an argument about money, hit my head on the corner, had to tell the neighbors I fell. May 7th. M choked me for the first time. Only for a few seconds, but I couldn't breathe. He cried after and said he was sorry. I don't believe him anymore. The entries went on, page after page of carefully documented horror. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone as I photographed each page, making sure every word was visible, legible. This was evidence. This was proof. I found more. In the back of Sarah's closet, shoved under a box of shoes she never wore, was another prepaid phone, older than the one she'd given me, probably her first attempt at having something Mark couldn't monitor. I turned it on and found photos. Sarah's bruised arms, her swollen face after an incident she'd hidden with makeup, text messages to Lisa, her friend from book club. I can't keep doing this. I'm scared, but I don't know how to leave. Lisa's response is, "You can stay with me. Anytime. Day or night. Just get out." Sarah had never taken her up on it. Too scared, too beaten down, too convinced she had nowhere to go. I downloaded everything to the phone she'd given me, then hid the old one back where I'd found it. Then I explored more carefully, looking for anything else that might be useful. In Mark's nightstand, I found a handgun. Not surprising. Lots of people kept guns for home protection. But the fact that an abuser had easy access to a weapon made my blood run cold. I photographed it, noted the make and model. In his closet, I found financial documents in a locked box that wasn't actually locked. The key was taped to the bottom. Bank statements showing that he'd been siphoning money from their joint account into a separate account in only his name. Sarah's paychecks from before she'd quit her job, all deposited and then immediately transferred. He'd been stealing from her for years, making sure she'd have nothing if she tried to leave. I photographed everything. By midnight, I documented enough to make my eyes burn and my head ache. I crept upstairs, careful to avoid the steps that creaked. Sarah had warned me about those. The bedroom door was closed. I stood outside it for a long moment, my hand on the knob, dreading what came next. I had to sleep in there, had to maintain the illusion. If I slept on the couch, he'd know something was wrong. I opened the door as quietly as I could. The room was dark except for the blue glow of Mark's phone on his nightstand. Of course, he slept with it within reach. He was on his side, back to my side of the bed, apparently asleep. I could hear his breathing, slow and steady. I changed in the bathroom with the door closed, putting on the oversized t-shirt Sarah had told me she slept in. No pajama pants. He didn't like her wearing those, said it was like she was putting up barriers. The thought made me want to vomit. I slipped into bed as carefully as possible, staying as far to my edge as I could, making myself as small as possible. The sheets were cold. The mattress was too firm. Everything about this felt wrong, felt like a violation, but I forced myself to stay still, to breathe normally, to pretend to fall asleep. I didn't actually sleep. How could I? I lay there in the dark, listening to Mark breathe, every muscle in my body tense and ready to fight if he reached for me. But he didn't move, didn't even seem to notice I was there. That might have been the worst part. Sarah slept next to this man every night, and he didn't even register her presence. She was furniture to him, an object he owned. The next morning came too early. Mark's alarm went off at 5:30, a harsh beeping that made me jolt awake even though I'd barely been dozing. He slapped it off, rolled out of bed without a word, headed to the bathroom. I heard the shower start. Sarah had told me what came next. I had to be up before he left, had to make his coffee, had to have his lunch packed. I dragged myself out of bed and went downstairs, my whole body aching from a night of tension. The coffee was easy. I'd watched Sarah's tutorial video on her phone 3 times yesterday. 3 sugars, splash of cream, 45 seconds in the microwave. The lunch was harder. She'd written down exactly what he liked. Turkey sandwich on white bread with yellow mustard, not too much. Chips, the plain kind, not barbecue. An apple. 2 cookies from the package in the pantry. Everything in a brown paper bag with his name written on it in marker. I had it ready by 6 o'clock when he came downstairs, dressed in his work khakis and polo shirt, hair still damp from the shower. He took the coffee, took a sip, said nothing. Took the lunch bag, checked inside it like he was inspecting my work, then set it down. "I'll be home at 4, he said. Not, "Have a good day," or "See you later," or anything that acknowledged I was a human being who might have thoughts or feelings. Just a statement of fact. "Okay," I said. He walked out. The garage door opened and closed. His car started. He was gone. I waited 5 minutes to make sure he wasn't coming back, then I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding and my knees almost gave out. I grabbed the counter to steady myself. 1 night down. How many more could I do this? As many as it takes, I told myself. As many as Sarah needed. I spent the morning continuing my documentation. I went through every drawer, every cabinet, every box. I found more evidence of his control, receipts he'd saved and annotated with notes about whether Sarah's purchases were necessary or wasteful. A calendar where he'd marked off every day of her cycle with little red dots, presumably so he'd know when to expect her period, could plan around her hormones. The thought made my skin crawl. I found evidence of affairs, email printouts from women he'd met online, conversations that were explicit and cruel, where he'd complained about his frigid wife who never wanted sex anymore. No mention that maybe she didn't want sex because he'd been abusing her. No acknowledgement that you can't terrorize someone and then expect them to be intimate with you. I photographed everything, every piece of evidence, every indicator of who Mark really was behind his nice guy mask. Around noon, I called Sarah from her phone. Mark would be able to see the call log, so I had to use it instead of the prepaid one. "Hi, Mom," I said when she answered, keeping my voice bright and normal in case Mark had found a way to listen in. "Just checking on your recovery." "I'm okay," Sarah said, understanding immediately. Her voice was stronger today, less broken. "The surgery went well. Resting like I'm supposed to." "That's good. I'll probably stay another day or 2. Make sure you're really okay before I head back." I paused. Mark is being very understanding. "That's good," she said, and I could hear the fear underneath her words. She was terrified for me. "I'll call you tomorrow. Love you." "Love you too. Be careful." I hung up and immediately checked the time. 1:15. Mark would be home in less than 3 hours, and I needed to figure out what to make for dinner. Sarah had left me instructions, but as I stood in the kitchen trying to plan a meal from the limited groceries available, Mark controlled the shopping, of course, had to approve every purchase. I felt a wave of rage wash over me. This was her life, every single day, walking on eggshells trying to anticipate his needs, afraid of making a mistake that would set him off. I made chicken with rice and green beans. Simple, hard to mess up. While it cooked, I cleaned the house, even though it was already spotless, because Sarah had warned me that Mark would check, would run his finger along surfaces looking for dust, would notice if anything was out of place. At 3:30, I changed into different clothes, the jeans and baggy sweater I'd worn yesterday, because Sarah had said he got annoyed if she wasted clothes by changing too often. I set the table, dished up the food at 4:25 so it would be hot but not dried out when he arrived at 4:30. He walked in at 4:32. I noted the time because Sarah had said he was precise, would have a reason for being late, would probably be in a bad mood because of traffic or a difficult client or something that wasn't his fault but that he'd take out on her anyway. "Hey," he said, and his voice was already tight with irritation. "Hi, dinner's ready." He sat down at his spot, without washing his hands, without taking off his shoes, without acknowledging the effort I'd put into the meal. He took a bite of chicken. "It's overcooked," he said flatly. It wasn't. I'd used a meat thermometer, had checked it twice, but I didn't argue. "Sorry," I murmured. "You always do this," he continued, and I could hear the anger building. "I work all day. I come home tired, and you can't even manage to cook a simple meal correctly. What do you even do all day while I'm at work?" "I clean the house." "The house is always clean. That's not special. That's just basic." He dropped his fork onto his plate with a clatter. "You don't work. You don't contribute financially. The least you could do is make sure dinner is edible." I bit the inside of my cheek so hard I tasted blood. This was the game. Nothing would ever be good enough. He'd find fault with anything just to keep her off balance, keep her feeling worthless. "I'll do better tomorrow," I said quietly, even though I wanted to throw the plate at his head. "You always say that." He picked up his fork again, took another bite, chewed deliberately. "But you never actually improve, do you? Maybe that's the problem. Maybe you're just not capable of being a good wife." The words hung in the air like poison. I stared at my plate, my hands clenched in my lap under the table where he couldn't see. Sarah had endured this. Every day, every meal, every interaction, a constant barrage of criticism designed to destroy her sense of self-worth. We ate the rest of the meal in silence. When he finished, he pushed his plate toward me again. The same gesture as yesterday, the same expectation that I'd clean up after him like a servant. He got up and walked to his chair without a word. I cleared the table, washed the dishes, put everything away. My hands were shaking with rage, but I kept them steady, kept my face neutral. This was only day 2. I had to hold it together. That evening followed the same pattern as the night before. Mark in his chair, me on the couch, the television too loud, occasional commands. But something was different tonight. I could feel his attention on me more often, could sense him watching when he thought I wasn't paying attention. Around 8 o'clock, he muted the TV during a commercial break. "You're different lately," he said. My heart stopped. "What do you mean?" "I don't know. Something's off." He was studying me, his eyes narrow. "You're quieter, more subdued." "I've been tired," I said, which was true enough. "Your mom's surgery has been stressful." He unmuted the TV, but I could still feel his suspicion like a weight on my shoulders. I excused myself and went upstairs, claiming I needed to use the bathroom. Once there, with the door closed, I pulled out the prepaid phone and texted Sarah. "He's noticing something's different. Not sure how much longer I can do this." Her response came 30 seconds later. "Please be careful. If it's too dangerous, just leave. I can figure something else out." I stared at the message. She was giving me an out. But if I left now, we wouldn't have enough evidence. We needed more. We needed something undeniable. "I'm okay," I texted back. "I can handle this." I hoped that was true. That night in bed was worse than the first. Mark didn't fall asleep right away. He lay there on his back, staring at the ceiling, and I could feel the tension radiating off him. I kept my eyes closed, tried to breathe evenly like I was sleeping, but every muscle in my body was coiled tight. "Sarah," he said suddenly, and my eyes flew open. "Yeah?" "Roll over. Look at me." I rolled over slowly, my heart pounding. In the darkness, I could just barely make out his face. "Did you do something to your hair?" he asked. "No. Why?" "It looks different." He reached out and I forced myself not to flinch as his fingers touched my hair, tucking a strand behind my ear. "You feel different." "I don't understand." "What you mean?" I kept my voice small, confused, the way Sarah would sound. His hand moved to my face, his thumb tracing my cheekbone. The touch was gentle, but somehow more terrifying than if he'd been rough. "I can't figure it out, but something's not right." "Mark, I'm the same as always. I'm just tired." I let a little frustration creep into my voice. Not too much, but enough to sound real. "You've been criticizing everything I do. Maybe that's why I seem different. Maybe I'm just exhausted from trying to be perfect for you." It was a risk. Pushing back even a little could set him off. But it was also something Sarah might say if she was at the end of her rope. And I needed him to believe this was just his wife having a bad week, not that someone had taken her place. He was quiet for a long moment. Then his hand dropped from my face. "You're right. I've been stressed at work, taking it out on you." The words sounded rehearsed, like he'd said them before. Probably had, every time he needed to smooth things over after an incident. "I'm sorry." "It's okay," I whispered, because that's what Sarah would say. "Come here." He pulled me toward him, and I had to fight every instinct that screamed at me to pull away. His arms went around me, and I was trapped against his chest, breathing in his smell, generic soap and deodorant and something underneath that was just him, the man who'd beaten my sister, who'd terrorized her for years. I lay there rigid in his embrace, counting seconds, waiting for him to fall asleep. His breathing eventually evened out and his grip loosened. I carefully extracted myself and moved back to my side of the bed. I didn't sleep at all that night. The third morning, I was exhausted, running on pure adrenaline and rage. Mark's routine was the same: up at 5:30, shower, downstairs for coffee and lunch. But today, when I handed him his lunch bag, he opened it and pulled everything out, examining each item. "Turkey again?" he said. "That's what you like." "I had turkey yesterday. Why would you make the same thing?" "Because you always want turkey," I thought. Because Sarah's notes said turkey sandwich every single day, exactly the same way. "I can make something else," I offered. "No, it's fine. I'll eat it. But try to be more thoughtful, okay? Put some effort in." He shoved everything back in the bag and left. The moment he was gone, I grabbed the prepaid phone and started filming. A video diary explaining who I was, why I was there, what I was documenting. If something happened to me, if Mark figured out the truth and hurt me, there would be evidence. There would be proof. Then I went back to searching. I'd been through most of the house, but there were still places I hadn't checked thoroughly. In the basement, I found boxes of old papers and documents, tax returns showing the steady decrease in Sarah's income as Mark had pressured her to work less and less. Insurance policies, and I noticed that the life insurance policy on Sarah was for $500,000, taken out 2 years ago. The beneficiary was Mark. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just about control. He'd been setting up a scenario where her death would benefit him financially. Had he been planning it? Was that where this had been heading? I photographed the policy, my hands shaking so badly I had to take 3 tries to get a clear picture. In another box, I found printouts of Sarah's old social media accounts, Facebook, Instagram, with Mark's handwritten notes in the margins, names of men who'd commented on her posts, even innocent things like happy birthday or great photo. He'd marked them all, noted what their relationship to her was, whether they were a threat. It was paranoia elevated to psychosis. He'd been monitoring and cataloging every interaction she had with the outside world. I photographed that too. By early afternoon, I had enough evidence to fill a prosecutor's case file: documented abuse, financial manipulation, control tactics, threats, Sarah's journal, the gun, the life insurance policy, everything we needed to ensure Mark would face consequences. But I knew it wasn't enough yet. We needed something more immediate. We needed evidence of him being violent, something undeniable that couldn't be explained away, and I was starting to form a plan for how to get it. At 3 o'clock, I used the prepaid phone to call Sarah's lawyer, the number Lisa had given her. I explained who I was, what I was doing, what I'd found. "This is highly irregular," the lawyer said, but I could hear the interest in her voice. "But if you're documenting everything and it's admissible, it will be. I'm being careful, but I need you to be ready. Within the next day or two, I'm going to need a protection order filed, police standing by, everything." "What are you planning?" "I'm going to make him show his true face," I said, "and I'm going to make sure someone other than me sees it." I spent the rest of the afternoon setting up. I positioned the prepaid phone on a bookshelf in the living room where it had a clear view of most of the room, started it recording video, hid it behind some decorative objects where Mark wouldn't notice it. I did the same in the kitchen with Sarah's old phone, the one I'd found in her closet. Then I made dinner. Pot roast with potatoes and carrots, one of Sarah's recipes that Mark supposedly liked. But I made subtle changes, undercooked the meat slightly, used too much salt, not enough that it would be inedible, but enough that he'd notice, enough to criticize. Because tonight I was going to push back. Tonight I was going to stop playing the submissive wife. Tonight I was going to trigger his rage and make sure it was all caught on camera. Mark came home at 4:30, same as always. He walked in, set his keys down, headed to the table. I served the pot roast. He cut into the meat. I watched his face as he realized it was undercooked, watched the irritation flash across his features. "It's raw," he said. "It's pink. That's medium rare. Some people prefer it that way." "I don't prefer it that way. You know I don't." His voice was rising. "Then maybe you should cook dinner yourself," I said, and the words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. He stared at me. "What did you just say?" "I said maybe you should cook your own dinner if mine is never good enough." I met his eyes directly, not looking away, not backing down. "I'm tired of trying to read your mind, tired of being criticized no matter what I do. Nothing I make is ever right. Nothing I do is ever good enough. So maybe you should just do it yourself." Mark's face was turning red. "Are you serious right now? After everything I do for you? I work all day to provide for you, to give you a nice house, a comfortable life, and you can't even be bothered to cook a decent meal?" "A comfortable life?" I let out a harsh laugh. "You control every penny I spend. You monitor my phone. You took the lock off the bathroom door. You give me an allowance like I'm a child. That's not comfort. That's prison." He stood up so fast his chair fell backward. "What the hell is wrong with you? Where is this coming from?" "I'm done," I said, standing up too, my heart racing but my voice steady. "I'm done pretending everything is fine. I'm done walking on eggshells. I'm done being scared of you." "Scared of me?" He moved around the table toward me, and I backed up instinctively. "I've never given you a reason to be scared of me. I'm a good husband. I take care of you." "You hit me." The words came out flat, factual. "You push me. You threw me down the stairs. You choke me when you're angry. That's not taking care of someone. That's abuse. Don't be dramatic. I've never—" He was still advancing, and I was still backing up, both of us moving toward the living room where the phone was recording everything. "You're being hysterical. This isn't like you at all. Maybe this is exactly like me, and you just never bothered to notice." His hand shot out and grabbed my wrist, his grip tight enough to hurt. "You need to stop this right now. Whatever's gotten into you, whatever you think you're doing, it stops now." "Let go of me." I tried to pull away, but his grip tightened, his fingers digging into my skin. "No, not until you calm down and start acting like my wife again." His other hand came up toward my throat, and I saw it happening. Saw the rage in his eyes, the intent to hurt. But this time I was ready. This time I wasn't Sarah, frozen with fear and conditioned to submit. I twisted my wrist in his grip the way I'd learned in self-defense class, breaking his hold. Then I shoved him, hard, both hands on his chest, and he stumbled backward in shock. "Don't touch me," I said, my voice low and dangerous. For a moment we just stared at each other. He looked confused, like the world had suddenly stopped making sense. Sarah had never fought back, never pushed him away, never stood up to him. His victim was supposed to cower, not resist. Then understanding crossed his face. Then rage. Pure, unfiltered rage. "You think you can put your hands on me?" he snarled, and he came at me again, both hands reaching for my throat this time. No hesitation, no holding back. I ducked under his arms and ran, heading for the front door, and he came after me. I could hear him behind me, his breathing harsh and angry, and I thought, this is it. This is where he shows everyone who he really is. But I'd miscalculated. I'd thought I could control this situation, thought I could trigger his violence and stay safe while documenting it. But in that moment, running for the door with him chasing me, I realized how stupid I'd been. Mark wasn't just controlling. He wasn't just abusive. He was willing to kill. I reached the door and yanked it open and ran outside into the early evening light, into the suburban street, where neighbors might see, where witnesses might exist. Mark followed me, and I spun around on the front lawn to face him. "Stay away from me," I shouted, loud enough that people would hear, loud enough that curtains would twitch in neighboring houses. "Get back inside," he hissed, aware suddenly that we were in public view. "Now!" "No." I pulled out Sarah's phone, the real one, the one he monitored, not the prepaid. "I'm calling the police." "Like hell you are." He lunged for the phone and I dodged, and we must have looked insane, struggling on the front lawn in full view of anyone who cared to watch. Then he grabbed me, got his hands on my shoulders and threw me down onto the grass, hard enough to knock the wind out of me. He was on top of me in a second, his hands around my throat squeezing, and I couldn't breathe, couldn't scream, could only claw at his hands as black spots danced in my vision. This was how Sarah felt, I thought distantly. This terror, this helplessness. But then I heard voices, shouting. The neighbor from across the street was running over, his wife on her phone, probably calling 911. Mark's hands loosened and I sucked in air, gasping, my throat on fire. "Get off her!" the neighbor yelled, and Mark rolled off me, his face a mask of shock and confusion, like he couldn't believe this was happening. I scrambled away from him, coughing, my whole body shaking. The neighbor's wife reached me first, put her arm around me, asked if I was okay. I couldn't speak, could only shake my head. In the distance, growing closer, I heard sirens. Mark stood there on his perfect lawn in front of his perfect house, and I saw the moment reality crash down on him, saw him realize what he'd done. Not that he'd tried to kill me, I don't think he cared about that, but that he'd done it in public, where people saw, where there were witnesses. His mask had finally slipped, and everyone could see the monster underneath. The police arrived 3 minutes later. 2 cars, 4 officers. They separated us immediately. 2 took Mark, who was already trying to explain that I'd provoked him, that I'd attacked him first, that this was all a misunderstanding. The other 2 came to me, to where I was still sitting on the neighbor's lawn, my throat already showing the marks of his hands. "Ma'am, are you all right? Do you need an ambulance?" I shook my head, found my voice, rough and painful. "I need you to listen to me. My name isn't Sarah Williams, it's Jenna Morrison. I'm Sarah's twin sister." I pulled out the prepaid phone that had somehow stayed in my pocket through everything. And I have evidence, video, photos, documents, everything you need to arrest him for domestic violence. The officer's eyes widened. "Wait, you're not his wife?" "No, but I can take you to her. She's safe. She's been safe this whole time while I've been gathering evidence." I looked over at Mark, who was still arguing with the other officers, still trying to charm his way out of this. He's been abusing her for years, and now you have proof. It took hours to sort everything out. More police arrived, detectives, Sarah's lawyer, who I'd called earlier and who'd been standing by. They took statements from me, from the neighbors who'd witnessed the attack. They collected the phones I'd used to record everything. They went into the house and found Sarah's journal, the financial documents, everything I'd gathered over the past 3 days. And through it all, Mark kept insisting it was a misunderstanding, that I'd tricked him, that he was the victim here. But the bruises on my throat told a different story. The evidence I'd collected told a different story. And most importantly, the witnesses who'd seen him try to strangle me on his front lawn told a different story. By 9 o'clock, they'd arrested him. Domestic violence, assault, attempted murder, possibly, though that would be up to the DA. They took him away in handcuffs, and I finally let myself break down. One of the officers drove me to my house where Sarah was waiting. She opened the door and saw me, saw the bruises on my throat that matched the ones on her face, and started crying. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed. "I'm so sorry. I never should have let you do this. You could have died." "But I didn't," I said, pulling her into a hug. "And now we have everything we need. He's done, Sarah. He's never going to hurt you again." We stood there in my doorway, two identical women marked by the same man's violence, holding each other while we both cried, for what she'd endured, for what I'd witnessed, for the years she'd lost to fear, but also for what came next: freedom, justice, a chance to heal. The nightmare wasn't over, I knew that. There would be court dates, testimony, the long process of legal proceedings. Sarah would have to relive her trauma over and over. There would be therapy, rebuilding, learning how to trust again. But tonight, in this moment, it was enough to know that Mark was behind bars, that he couldn't hurt her anymore, that his mask had finally been ripped away for everyone to see. My throat throbbed where his hands had been. It would bruise badly. The paramedics had wanted to take me to the hospital, but I'd refused. The bruises were evidence, proof of what he was capable of, and I'd wear them like a badge of honor, knowing that I'd helped save my sister. "Come on," I said, guiding her inside and locking the door behind us. "Let's get some ice." We were going to be okay, both of us. It would take time, but we were going to be okay. The following weeks passed in a blur of police statements, meetings with lawyers and medical examinations. The bruises on my throat turned from red to purple to a sickly yellow-green, a visible timeline of Mark's violence. I wore them without shame. Every time someone stared, every time I caught a glimpse of myself in a mirror, I remembered why they were there. Not because I was a victim, because I'd chosen to step into danger to save my sister. Sarah's bruises were fading too, but slower. The physical marks would heal eventually, but we both knew the invisible ones would take much longer. The district attorney's office moved quickly once they saw the evidence I'd gathered. Sarah's journal, the financial documents, the videos I'd recorded, the testimony from the neighbors who'd witnessed Mark attacking me. It all painted an undeniable picture of systematic abuse. They charged him with multiple counts: domestic violence, assault with intent to cause bodily harm, unlawful imprisonment, financial exploitation, and attempted murder for what he'd done to me on the lawn. His bail was set high, $200,000, and his family scrambled to come up with it. His mother called Sarah's phone repeatedly, leaving voicemails that ranged from tearful pleas to angry accusations. "How could you do this to him? He's a good man. He was under so much stress. You must have done something to provoke him." The same excuses, the same justifications that abusers' families always made. Sarah listened to one of the voicemails and then blocked the number. "I'm done being responsible for his feelings," she said quietly. "Done making excuses. Done protecting him." It was a small thing, blocking a phone number, but I could see what it meant to her. It was taking back control. The lawyer Sarah had consulted, Jennifer Chen, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a steel backbone, was worth every penny of her retainer. She filed for an emergency protection order that was granted within 24 hours. Mark was prohibited from contacting Sarah, from coming within 500 feet of her, from accessing their joint accounts. She filed for divorce immediately, citing abuse and requesting full dissolution of their marital assets. "He's going to fight this," Jennifer warned us during one of our meetings at her office. Men like Mark don't let go easily. They see their wives as property. He'll claim you're lying, that you manipulated the situation, that your sister entrapped him. "Let him try," I said. "We have everything on video. We have witnesses. We have years of documented abuse." "I know, and that's why we're going to win." Jennifer smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "But I need you both to be prepared for what's coming. This is going to get ugly. He's going to try to destroy Sarah's credibility. He'll bring up anything he can, past relationships, mental health, anything that makes her look unstable." Sarah's hand found mine under the table. "I don't care what he says about me anymore. I just want to be free of him." "You will be," Jennifer promised. "I'll make sure of it." Mark made bail after 4 days. His parents mortgaged their house to come up with the money, and the thought made me sick. They were sacrificing their financial security to free a man who'd terrorized their daughter-in-law for years. But that was the power of his mask. Even his own family couldn't see past it. The protection order meant he couldn't go back to the house he'd shared with Sarah, couldn't contact her directly. But that didn't stop him from trying to control the narrative. Within a week of his release, a post appeared on his Facebook page. Written by him or someone helping him, it didn't matter. It painted him as the victim of a cruel trick. A man who'd been deceived by his wife's identical twin, who'd been set up and falsely accused. "My wife and I had our problems like any couple," the post read, "but we were working through them. Then her sister showed up, pretended to be her, and deliberately provoked me into an argument that she recorded. This is entrapment. This is a malicious attack on my character. I'm innocent of these charges, and I will fight to clear my name." The comments section filled up with support from people who didn't know the truth, friends, co-workers, casual acquaintances, all expressing shock and outrage on his behalf. Mark would never hurt anyone. This is clearly a setup. Some women will do anything for money and attention. Sarah read the post on my laptop, and I watched the color drain from her face. "They believe him," she whispered. "They all believe him." "The people who matter don't," I reminded her. "The police believe you. The DA believes you. The judge believes you. That's what counts. But everyone we know, his friends, people from the neighborhood, they think I'm lying." Her voice cracked. "They think I made this up." "Then they weren't really your friends to begin with." I closed the laptop. Anyone who'd believe him over you, who'd look at those bruises and call them fake, who'd see the evidence and still take his side, those people don't deserve a place in your life. She nodded, but I could see the pain in her eyes. This was another kind of abuse, public humiliation, the destruction of her reputation. Mark was still hurting her even from a distance, but not everyone believed his story. Lisa, Sarah's friend from book club, showed up at my door 3 days after Mark posted his defense. She was carrying a casserole and a bottle of wine, and when Sarah opened the door, Lisa pulled her into a fierce hug. "I should have done more," Lisa said, tears streaming down her face. "I knew something was wrong. I should have pushed harder, should have made you leave sooner." "It's not your fault," Sarah told her. "I wasn't ready. I had to get there on my own." Lisa stayed for hours. They talked about everything. The early warning signs Lisa had noticed, the way Mark had slowly isolated Sarah from their friend group, the times Lisa had wanted to say something but hadn't known how, and then Lisa said something that made Sarah break down crying. "We all want you back," Lisa said. Book club. The whole group. We've been texting about you. Worried sick. Karen, Michelle, Amanda. Everyone wants to know you're okay. We're here for you, Sarah, however long it takes. But Mark said, Mark is full of shit, Lisa interrupted. We never believed him, not for a second. We know you. We know what kind of person you are. And more importantly, we know what kind of person he is. We've seen the way he looked at you, the way he controlled you. We should have said something sooner. Sarah cried harder, but these were different tears. Relief, gratitude, the realization that she wasn't as alone as she'd thought. After Lisa left, Sarah seemed lighter somehow, like a weight had lifted. I thought I'd lost everyone, she admitted. Thought they'd all take his side. The people who matter are still here, I said, and the ones who aren't. You're better off without them. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks after Mark's arrest. Jennifer prepared us thoroughly, explaining what would happen, what questions we'd be asked, how Mark's lawyer would try to attack our credibility. She was right about it getting ugly. Mark's lawyer, a slick man in an expensive suit named David Patterson, had built his career defending abusers. He was good at what he did, which made him dangerous. In his opening statement, he painted Sarah as a manipulative woman who'd fabricated abuse claims to get a better divorce settlement, and me as her willing accomplice who'd committed fraud by impersonating her. The defense will show that Mr. Williams, while perhaps not perfect, is not the monster the prosecution wants you to believe, Patterson said smoothly. He is a hard-working man who loved his wife, who provided her with a comfortable home, who never once laid a hand on her in anger. What happened on that lawn was not attempted murder. It was a man defending himself against someone who'd broken into his home, impersonated his wife, and deliberately provoked him. It was a masterful spin on the truth. Take the facts and twist them just enough to create reasonable doubt. But Jennifer was better. She systematically demolished Mark's defense. She presented Sarah's journal with its carefully documented dates and descriptions. She showed the photos I'd taken of the removed bathroom lock, the tracking app on Sarah's phone, the financial documents showing his theft of her money. She called the neighbors who'd witnessed the attack, who testified that they'd heard me shouting for help, had seen Mark on top of me with his hands around my throat. And then she called me to the stand. I'd been dreading this moment. Not because I was afraid of testifying, I'd told the truth and I'd stand by it, but because it meant facing Mark directly. He sat at the defense table in a nice suit, looking respectable and calm, like he was the reasonable one and we were the crazy ones. Jennifer walked me through my testimony, why I'd agreed to switch places with Sarah, what I'd found in the house, what I'd documented, how Mark had treated me during those 3 days. And on the evening of the assault, Jennifer asked, what happened? I described it all. The deliberately imperfect dinner, the way I'd pushed back against his criticism, how he'd grabbed me, chased me, thrown me to the ground, and choked me. My voice stayed steady throughout, clinical and factual. Then it was Patterson's turn to cross-examine. Ms. Morrison, he began, his voice dripping with false sympathy, you've testified that you impersonated your sister, entered Mr. Williams' home under false pretenses, and deliberately provoked him. Is that correct? I documented his abuse, I corrected. I didn't provoke him. I simply stopped being the submissive victim he expected. But you admit you deceived him? Yes. And you admit you intentionally did things to make him angry. I stopped pretending everything he did was acceptable. If that made him angry, that's on him, not me. Patterson smiled like he'd scored a point. Ms. Morrison, isn't it true that you have a history of antagonistic behavior toward my client? That you never liked him, never approved of his marriage to your sister? I didn't trust him, I said. Turns out I was right not to. Objection, Jennifer called. Argumentative. Sustained, the judge said. Patterson continued, trying to paint me as the aggressor, the troublemaker, the sister who'd never accepted Mark and had finally found a way to destroy him. But every time he tried to twist my words, I brought it back to the facts. The bruises on Sarah's face, the evidence I'd collected, the video of him attacking me. Then Sarah took the stand. I watched from the gallery as she walked to the witness box. She'd dressed conservatively, a navy blue dress, minimal makeup, her hair pulled back. She looked fragile and strong at the same time, and I'd never been more proud of her. Jennifer took her through her testimony gently. How Mark had courted her, swept her off her feet, seemed perfect at first. How the control had started small, opinions about her friends, suggestions about her clothes, and escalated over years. The isolation, the financial abuse, the violence. He told me I was worthless, Sarah said, her voice quiet but steady, that no one else would ever want me, that if I left, I'd have nothing and no one, and for a long time, I believed him. Do you still believe that? Jennifer asked. No. Sarah looked directly at Mark for the first time. I know now that he was wrong. I'm not worthless. I deserved better. I deserve better. Patterson's cross-examination was brutal. He questioned everything, why she'd stayed so long if the abuse was real, why she hadn't reported it to police, why there were no hospital records, all the victim-blaming questions that made my blood boil. But Sarah held firm. I was scared, she said simply. He threatened to kill me, and I believed him. When someone controls every aspect of your life, when they've broken you down piece by piece, it's not as simple as just leaving. You can't understand that unless you've lived it. Patterson tried to poke holes in her story, to find inconsistencies, but there weren't any, because it was the truth. The hearing lasted 2 days. At the end, the judge ruled that there was sufficient evidence to move forward with a trial, and Mark would remain under the protection order. His bail conditions were modified to include electronic monitoring, an ankle bracelet that would alert authorities if he came near Sarah. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us. Mark's Facebook post had gotten enough attention that the local news had picked up the story. They shouted questions. Sarah, do you feel justice was served today? Jenna, do you regret impersonating your sister? Was this really about abuse or about money? Jennifer stepped in front of us like a shield. My clients have no comment at this time. Thank you. She hustled us to her car and we drove away, leaving the circus behind. You both did great in there, Jennifer said as she drove. Really great. The judge saw through Patterson's nonsense. We're in a good position for trial. When will that be? Sarah asked. Probably 3 to 6 months. These things take time. Jennifer glanced at us in the rearview mirror. In the meantime, focus on healing. Both of you. Get therapy if you haven't already. Take care of yourselves. Don't engage with Mark's social media campaign. Let me handle that. Just focus on moving forward. Moving forward. It sounded so simple when she said it like that. That night, Sarah and I sat on my porch with coffee, watching the sun set. It was early October, and the air had that first hint of autumn chill. Sarah was wearing one of my sweaters, had borrowed my slippers. She'd been staying with me since the night she'd shown up with bruises on her face, and we'd fallen into a comfortable routine, cooking together, watching TV, talking about everything and nothing. I saw Dr. Morrison yesterday, Sarah said suddenly. Dr. Angela Morrison, no relation, was the therapist Jennifer had recommended. She specializes in domestic violence survivors. How was it? Hard, good, both. Sarah wrapped her hands around her coffee mug. She said what I'm feeling is normal. The fear, the shame, the anger. Said it'll take time, but I'll get through it. You will, I agreed. We both will. She was quiet for a moment, then, I still flinch when doors slam, when someone raises their voice, when I see a man who looks like Mark from behind. That's normal too. I know, but I hate it. Hate that he still has this power over me even though he's not here. She turned to look at me, and in the fading light I could see tears on her cheeks. "Do you think I'll ever feel safe again?" "Yes," I said firmly. "It won't be tomorrow or next week or even next month. But yes, you will. Because you're stronger than you think. You survived him, Sarah. You survived years of hell and you're still here, still fighting. That takes incredible strength. I couldn't have done it without you. You would have found a way. You were already planning to leave. You'd saved money, contacted a lawyer. You just needed a little push." I took her hand. "I'm proud of you. So proud." We sat in comfortable silence, watching the sky turn from orange to pink to purple. Somewhere down the street, kids were playing, their laughter carrying on the evening breeze. A dog barked. A car drove past. Normal sounds. Safe sounds. "I got a job offer," Sarah said eventually. "Lisa's company is hiring for an administrative position. She recommended me, and they want to interview me next week." "That's great. Are you going to take it?" "I think so. I need to work. Need to be independent again. Need to remember who I was before Mark." She paused. "Dr. Morrison says that's part of the healing process, reclaiming the parts of myself he tried to destroy." "He didn't destroy you," I said. "He tried, but he failed." Over the following weeks, Sarah slowly began to rebuild her life. She got the job, started working again for the first time in over a year. She reconnected with old friends, went back to book club, started exercising again. She opened a bank account in only her name, started making decisions without asking permission from anyone. She also started laughing again, real laughter, not the nervous, performative kind I'd heard in her voice on phone calls over the past years. The first time it happened, we were watching a comedy special and something genuinely funny happened. The sound was so unexpected that we both froze, and then she laughed harder. "I forgot what that felt like," she said, wiping tears from her eyes. "Real joy." But the healing wasn't linear. Some days were better than others. Some nights she'd wake up screaming from nightmares. Some mornings she couldn't get out of bed because the weight of everything was too heavy. Some afternoons she'd break down, crying over nothing or everything. On those days, I was there, making coffee, sitting beside her, not trying to fix it, just being present, because that's what she needed. Not solutions or platitudes or someone telling her to be strong, just someone who understood. I had my own struggles too. The bruises on my throat healed, but sometimes I'd catch myself touching the spot where Mark's hands had been, feeling the ghost of pressure. I had nightmares about that moment on the lawn, the terrifying sensation of not being able to breathe, the certainty that I was going to die. I'd wake up gasping, my hand at my throat, Sarah rushing in to turn on the light and remind me I was safe. We went to therapy together sometimes, sessions focused on trauma and healing and sisterhood. Dr. Morrison helped us process not just what had happened, but how it had affected our relationship. The guilt Sarah felt for putting me in danger, the protective anger I felt toward Mark, the fear we both carried, that somehow, despite the protection order and the ankle monitor, he'd find a way to hurt us again. "You're both experiencing hypervigilance," Dr. Morrison explained during one session. "Your brains are stuck in survival mode. Every noise is a threat. Every stranger could be him. It's exhausting, I know, but it will get better as you create new, safe experiences that teach your nervous system you're actually safe." So we worked on creating those safe experiences. Movie nights at home, long walks in the park, dinners with Lisa and the book club women, small, normal things that slowly reprogrammed our brains to understand that not everything was dangerous. Mark's trial was scheduled for January, 4 months away. It felt like both an eternity and not enough time. Jennifer kept us updated on the proceedings, motions filed, evidence submitted, witness lists exchanged. Mark's lawyer was trying everything to get the charges reduced or dismissed, claiming entrapment, claiming self-defense, claiming Sarah and I had conspired to frame him. None of it was working. The evidence was too strong. In November, something unexpected happened. Mark's mother reached out, not to Sarah's phone, which was still blocked, but through Jennifer. She wanted to meet with Sarah, wanted to apologize. Sarah was conflicted. What if it's a trick? What if she's trying to get information for his defense? Jennifer will be there, I reminded her. And you don't have to do this if you don't want to. You don't owe her anything. But Sarah decided to do it. I need to hear what she has to say, need to know if she actually understands what he did or if this is just about saving her son. The meeting took place at Jennifer's office. Sarah wanted me there, so I sat beside her while Mark's mother, Patricia Williams, a thin woman in her 60s who looked like she'd aged 10 years in the past months, sat across the table from us. "I owe you an apology," Patricia began, her voice shaking. "I didn't believe you at first, couldn't believe my son would do those things. I made excuses, blamed you, said terrible things about you to anyone who'd listen." Sarah sat very still, her face unreadable. "But then I went through his things," Patricia continued. "The house, his papers, his computer. I found—" She choked up. "I found things that made me realize I didn't know my son at all. Emails to other women where he called you horrible names, search histories about how to hide financial assets, texts to friends bragging about keeping you in line." Tears were streaming down her face now. "I was wrong, so wrong, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Sarah was quiet for a long moment, then, "Did you know? While it was happening, did you know and look the other way?" "No, I swear I didn't. He hid it from everyone, including me. But I should have seen the signs, should have noticed how thin you got, how quiet. You stopped coming to family dinners. When you did come, you barely spoke. I thought you were just shy, or that you and Mark were having normal marriage problems." She looked Sarah in the eye. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve that. I just wanted you to know that I believe you now, and that I'm testifying for the prosecution." That got Sarah's attention. "You're testifying against your own son?" "He's not the son I thought I raised. The man who did those things to you, who tried to kill your sister, that's not someone I can protect." Patricia's voice was firm now, steady. "I'll testify about the things I found, the evidence that shows his pattern of control and violence. I'll tell the truth, whatever it costs me." After Patricia left, Sarah broke down crying. Not sad tears, something else. Relief, maybe. Validation. The knowledge that even Mark's own mother believed her now. "It doesn't fix anything," Sarah said through her tears. "Doesn't undo what he did, but it helps. Knowing I'm not crazy. Knowing people see the truth." "You were never crazy," I said, holding her. "You were surviving." Christmas came and went quietly. Sarah and I spent it alone, making a simple dinner, watching old movies, avoiding anything that felt like the holidays she'd spent with Mark. It wasn't festive or joyful, but it was peaceful, safe, and that was enough. In early January, a week before the trial was set to begin, Mark's lawyer contacted Jennifer with a plea deal. Mark would plead guilty to reduced charges in exchange for a lighter sentence, 5 years instead of the potential 20 he was facing. "What do you think?" Jennifer asked Sarah during an emergency meeting. "It's your decision. We can take this to trial and probably win, get him the maximum sentence. Or you can accept the plea and it's over. No trial, no testimony, no more putting yourself through this." Sarah looked at me, then back at Jennifer. "What would you do?" "Honestly, I'd take it to trial. The evidence is overwhelming. We'd win. And he deserves the maximum sentence for what he did." Jennifer paused. "But I'm not the one who has to testify. I'm not the one who has to sit in a courtroom and relive the abuse while his lawyer tries to tear you apart. Only you can decide if it's worth it." Sarah was quiet for a long time. Then, what happens if I accept the plea? He serves 5 years? With good behavior, probably out in 3, Jennifer admitted. And there'd be a permanent protection order. He couldn't contact you, couldn't come near you. You'd get a favorable divorce settlement. The house, half his retirement, alimony. He'd have a felony conviction on his record. 3 years, Sarah repeated. And then he's out. Free to start over. Free to do this to someone else. There's that possibility, yes. Sarah looked at me again. I could see her struggling with the decision, weighing her own peace of mind against the desire for justice, for keeping other women safe from him. We go to trial, she finally said. I'm not letting him off easy. I want the judge and jury to hear everything. I want it on the record, and I want him locked up for as long as possible so he can't do this to anyone else. Jennifer smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. The trial began on a cold Monday in January. The courthouse was packed. Reporters, curious onlookers, Mark's remaining supporters, and our people. Lisa and the book club women, some of Sarah's colleagues from her new job, even a few strangers who'd followed the case and wanted to show support for Sarah. I testified again, walking the jury through everything I'd discovered during my 3 days as Sarah. The journal, the financial documents, the removed lock, the tracking apps, the video footage of Mark criticizing Sarah's cooking, controlling her movements, exhibiting all the patterns of an abuser. Sarah testified for 2 full days. She was incredible, strong and clear, never wavering even when Patterson tried to rattle her with aggressive questions. She described the escalating abuse in detail, the isolation, the financial control, the violence, the threats. He told me he'd make it look like an accident, she said, her voice steady, that no one would believe me if I tried to leave, that I was nothing without him. And do you believe that now? Jennifer asked. No. Sarah looked at the jury. I know now that he was wrong about everything. I'm not nothing. I'm a survivor. Patricia Williams testified too. She described finding the evidence that had changed her mind about her son, the emails and texts that showed his true nature. She cried on the stand, apologized again to Sarah, and admitted she'd enabled him by making excuses for years. The neighbors who'd witnessed the attack testified. The police who'd responded. Medical experts who examined photos of Sarah's bruises and confirmed they were consistent with physical abuse. Financial experts who walked through the theft of Sarah's money. Patterson tried to create doubt, but the evidence was overwhelming. The video footage alone was damning. You could see Mark's contempt, his control, his rage when I'd pushed back. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty, on all counts: domestic violence, assault, financial exploitation, attempted murder. Mark's face went white when the verdict was read. His lawyer immediately filed notice of appeal, but we all knew it was over. He was going to prison. Sentencing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. The judge heard testimony from Sarah about the impact Mark's abuse had on her life, heard from his lawyer pleading for leniency, heard from Patricia begging for mercy for her son. Then the judge spoke. Mr. Williams, you presented yourself as a loving husband while systematically destroying your wife. You isolated her, controlled her, stole from her, and ultimately tried to kill her when she sought help. Your actions were calculated, deliberate, and showed a complete disregard for her humanity. The judge's voice was hard. This court finds you were a danger to your wife and potentially to society. The sentence is 20 years in state prison, with no possibility of parole for 15 years. 20 years. More than we'd hoped for. Mark was led away in handcuffs, and for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I saw Sarah's shoulders truly relax. It was over. He was gone. And by the time he got out, if he served his full sentence, he'd be in his 60s, his prime years spent in prison. It was justice. Not perfect, but real. Outside the courthouse, Sarah stood in front of the reporters who'd been covering the trial. "I want other women to know," she said, her voice carrying across the crowd, "that if you're in an abusive relationship, you're not alone, you're not crazy, you're not worthless, and you deserve better." She paused, gathering her thoughts. Leaving is hard, maybe the hardest thing you'll ever do, but staying is harder. Every day you stay is a day you lose yourself a little more. Please, if you're reading this, if you're watching this, reach out. To a friend, a family member, a shelter, a hotline, there are people who will help you, who will believe you. You deserve to be safe. You deserve to be free. The reporters shouted questions, but Sarah shook her head, took my hand, and walked away. We drove home in silence, both of us processing everything that had happened. The trial was over. Mark was in prison. The worst was behind us. But the healing, that was just beginning. 3 months after the trial, Sarah moved into her own apartment. The house she'd shared with Mark had sold quickly. She didn't want it, didn't want anything that reminded her of those years. She took her half of the proceeds and put a down payment on a small 2-bedroom place across town from me. Close enough to visit easily, far enough to have her own space. I helped her move in, helped her pick out furniture that was hers, not chosen by someone else. She painted the walls, bright colors, not beige. She hung artwork she liked. She filled the space with plants and books and things that made her happy. "It's mine," she said, standing in her living room, looking around with wonder. "All mine. No one can take it away from me." "How does it feel?" She thought about it for a moment. Scary, but good, like I'm learning how to be a person again. We ordered pizza and sat on her new couch, and she told me about her therapy sessions, about the progress she was making. She'd started dating again. Nothing serious, just coffee with a guy from work who made her laugh. She was taking a painting class, had reconnected with her grown daughter who'd been worried sick about her for years. "I'm not the same person I was before Mark," she admitted. "I'll never be that person again. Too much has happened." "That's okay," I said. "You don't have to be who you were before. You can be someone new." "Someone stronger," she agreed. "Someone who knows what she deserves and won't settle for less." 6 months after the trial, Sarah and I went back to visit Dr. Morrison together. She wanted to assess our progress, see how we were doing. "You've both come so far," Dr. Morrison said, reviewing her notes. "Sarah, you're working, living independently, building a support system. You're engaging with life again instead of just surviving. And Jenna, you've processed your own trauma from the experience, established better boundaries, maintained your support of your sister without sacrificing your own well-being." "I still have nightmares sometimes," Sarah admitted. "Still flinch at loud noises. Still feel anxious when I see men who look like Mark." "That's normal," Dr. Morrison said gently. "Trauma doesn't just disappear, but you've developed healthy coping mechanisms. You're managing it instead of being controlled by it. That's huge progress." "What about the future?" I asked. "Will she ever fully heal?" "Healing isn't about going back to who you were before," Dr. Morrison explained. "It's about integrating the experience and moving forward as a different, but whole, person. Sarah will always carry this with her, but it doesn't have to define her. She gets to decide who she becomes." As we left the office, Sarah turned to me. "Thank you for everything, for believing me, for risking your life to help me, for being there every single day since." "You're my sister," I said simply. "My twin, my other half. I'd do it again in a heartbeat." "I know, but I hope you never have to." We walked to our cars, and for the first time in months, maybe years, I saw Sarah smile. A real smile, bright and genuine, that reached her eyes. The smile I remembered from before Mark, before the abuse, when we were just two sisters who shared everything. "Coffee next week?" she asked. "Absolutely. Your place or mine?" "Mine," she said. and there was pride in her voice. "I'll make breakfast. Real breakfast, not the cereal we've been living on." I watched her drive away, her hand waving out the window, and felt something settle in my chest. Hope, relief, the knowledge that we'd made it through the worst and come out the other side. Sarah still flinches when doors slam too hard. She still checks locks twice before bed. She still has moments where the fear creeps back in, where she's convinced Mark will somehow get out of prison early and come after her. But those moments are getting fewer, the space between them growing longer. She's learning to laugh again, to trust again, to believe she deserves good things. She's rebuilding her life piece by piece, day by day, brick by brick, creating something new from the rubble Mark left behind. And I'm here, whenever she needs me. Not hovering, not fixing, just present. Because that's what sisters do. That's what love looks like. We survived, both of us, and that's not nothing. The bruises faded, the physical wounds healed, and slowly, carefully, so are the invisible ones. A full year has passed now since that night Sarah showed up at my door with her face covered in bruises. A year since I made the decision to switch places with her, to step into her nightmare so she could escape it. Sometimes I think about Mark in prison. Wonder if he's learned anything, if he's capable of understanding what he did. Probably not. Men like him rarely do. They see themselves as victims, even when they're the ones who inflicted the pain. But that's not my problem anymore. Not Sarah's problem either. Our problem now is healing, moving forward, building lives worth living. And we're doing it together. The way we've always done everything important. Two sisters, two survivors, two women who refuse to let an abuser win. We made it through the darkness. And now, finally, we're finding our way back to the light.